loud. I wish somebody would just touch my booty.
I wonder what the thing would really sound like.
I'm not the thing. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, don't look at me. I'm not the thing either.
I'm sorry. I was drooling a little bit. I'm going to kill you tonight.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's right, bitch.
Ooh, that was scary, Mitchell.
Oh, thanks. All right. Let's get to recording, guys. Come on.
Okay, punch it, Chewy. This week on the Drop Culture Podcast, we're talking about Universal Pictures' 1982 movie, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Does he own
Not
it?
that thing. This thing.
This Thing. We don't know who the thing is. Even in this room, we don't know who the thing is.
That's right. Could be any of us.
Could be any of us. It could be all of us, and we just don't know yet.
All I know is it's not me, guys. So
Do you really know?
Yeah.
That
you
100% makes it you, Mitch.
Do you really know?
you should just trust me. Why don't you guys?
Who
trust
goes
me?
there?
What
Is
do
it you?
It's
Is it
Mitchell.
me? It's Mitch.
It's me. Like, ask me something only I would know. Except for that one thing. Do not bring that up.
Well, then I'm stuck. I don't know what else to ask. You tell me something about yourself that I don't know.
No.
Well, then
How do I know
that
you're
wouldn't
not
make
just-
sense either.
Oh, no. There's no logic behind that question at all.
You're like, one time
At band camp.
I batted 420 during the Summer League of Baseball.
Whoa.
It's just like when I went to go to take my test to go to college or whatever, and they had me do the essay part, and they were like, tell us about something that happened in your life, describe it. And I just wrote a story about something that never happened. And they were like, this is amazing. And
Wow.
I'm like, oh, cool.
What a great life. Thanks.
And then I was like, I'm out of here. I'm joining the army.
You're like, fuck college, man.
Your mom goes to college.
She did. All right. 1982 is The Thing.
What else happened in 1982?
A lot of things happened in 1982.
War were declared.
At which country? Iran?
Grenada.
Yeah. I saw it all go down in Grenada. All right. This movie was released June 25th, 1982. This was a crazy year for movies, too. This was kind of like the beginning of, I would almost say, a rise in pictures through the 80s. This kind of 1982 was a huge year because one, E.T. came out. That was one of the biggest movies of all time.
That I've never seen all the way through.
You never seen
in
it all the
my
way
whole
through?
life, and like all my family's like, what? And I'm like,
Subsequently, that killed this movie because that was a friendly alien. This was an evil alien. And just in case you haven't ever watched it before, go watch it. This is literally a masterpiece. This is one of the greatest movies of all time.
spoiler alert, there's
Not-
an alien.
There's an alien in it. Whoops. Not necessarily the greatest. It's going to rank in my top 10 of all time movies just because I'm a big horror junkie, like a lot of that stuff. But this one was probably one of the scariest movies that's ever been made because it's not a traditional scare. It's not a traditional slasher. It's weird. We haven't seen a lot of movies like this until like last year too, because there's a lot of scary movies that have come out in the last couple of years that have kind of tapped into this. And it's taken how long now? Almost 40 fucking years.
I would say there's like little spots of ones that come, throughout time.
But nothing like this.
No.
Nothing like this. This one was just amazing.
I
Made
think
by
that, like Life was based, the movie Life. Did you ever see that?
With,
Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds, I think, was in it for a minute. And,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
the spaceship.
yeah.
that was not a bad movie.
But that was the same kind of idea. Like you never knew what was going on.
it was more Alien than this one because Alien was outer space. This one was
Well, no,
more.
I'm saying that was more like Thing in a contained.
Yeah, because you didn't
area.
know what was
Yeah,
what. Yeah,
right.
I understand. Yeah. Pretty good time for movies, of course. So, in the 80s, it was really starting to movies were hitting that, I guess, Bronze Age. Because you had the Golden Age, Silver Age, and then Bronze. I mean, this really kind of was there. And this was all the teachings that everybody had from the Universal monster movies and all that sci-fi stuff from the 50s. All the directors came up and they made movies like this. You had Romero, Carpenter, Tobe Hooper, people like that were making really good horror movies and kind of turning the genre on its ear. And then this was one of those movies that is a complete anomaly because When it came out, didn't do shit. Nobody liked it. It was up against E.T. Then it grew, and it still grows, and now it's listed as a masterpiece. Roger Ebert called it fucking vomit.
Yeah.
Everybody did not like it. But then when E.T. came out, everybody's like, oh my God, it's like one of the greatest movies ever because it's Steven Spielberg. He was inventing the summer blockbusters at that point. You know, so this came out and it was a very dark movie, isolated movie. The characters, it was an all male cast except for one female voice. And that was it. It was one of the parts that we'll talk about. And it's it's a very good ensemble cast too because the characters are so rich. On the surface, when you watch it the first time, the characters aren't as rich as you might think. Now, whenever it came down to the actual budget of this movie, the budget was $15 million. You know, the box office brought 19.6, so not a success. It made its money back, but it really didn't do anything too extravagant. But now it has spawned comic books, video games, board games. There's everything around this. I mean, the imagery from it.
A lot of that's due to that, that VCR. Mm-hmm. Once that VCR hit, home video hit, everybody was renting this thing, and it just grew. Cable television was hitting really big at that time too, and it grew on top of that. Absolutely. Everybody in their parents' collection probably had a copy of the thing somewhere. You know, rented it, bought it, even when it was $5 at Walmart. You know, somebody had a copy of this that you knew. It was just such a good movie. You know, John Carpenter is probably one of the greatest directors of all time, in my opinion. Pretty damn good.
Every movie that he's done has been individual and just great. It's very Carpenter-esque, but at the same time, they're individual and they're really good. Everything that he does in them is completely his vision and his eyes. Just the way that he sees everything is just great, I think.
Was this his first studio movie after Halloween?
I believe so, and if anybody wants to correct me, they can, but I believe this was his first really big one. The production on this one literally was starting in the mid to late 70s. They were talking about it because the original source material is Who Goes There by
John W. Campbell in 1938. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 1938. It was basically a really small novella that was in a magazine, and it spawned this whole interest in this whole deal, which they made The Thing in 1951. With James Arness, Howard Hawks, another great director, probably one of the greatest directors of all time, too.
The vegetable monster.
Yeah.
Carrot monster. I'm the carrot man.
And that was the true 50s kind of a sci-fi thing. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about how a lot of these directors that were coming up in the early 60s, late 60s, early 70s, things like that, were coming up with their own stuff because they had watched those movies so much. They really loved them. One thing that I've always read that John Carpenter didn't want was a dude in a suit.
Right.
He always grew up with that.
Yeah. Well, that's all he had back in the day, right?
That's all everybody had. It was having some dude in a suit.
The thing is that I really feel like this movie could have been made in the 50s.
Could have been made at any time.
Yeah,
it took the right person for it.
True.
You know, and Carpenter, what's interesting too is like Tobe Hooper, the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was once attached to this. There's so many people that were attached to this movie at the very beginning of their acquiring the rights and then kind of
Which is weird that Carpenter ended up with it because he actually had a love for the old 50s movie.
Yeah, and he actually, in Halloween, there's several scenes where they're showing the old Howard Hawks movie.
That's right.
Which is pretty cool. And it's almost like I don't know if it was a foreshadowing for his next big movie, you know, but this was when he was just doing a lot of stuff because he had the most successful independent movie of all time at that point, and that was Halloween.
Dude, $300,000 budget, and it made $70 million.
Yeah, I mean, he crushes it, and it's still making money, and his influence is everywhere now. The slasher film, just the way that the look, the feel, the characters, everything like that is all there. That's why this movie grew so much, is because really the cast was the glue that held the source material on all of this.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was there, but you put all the right pieces together, you got something that's scary, it's suspenseful, but then it's also like eerie. It makes you feel weird. The first time, second time, third time, you'll always find something new with it, but you'll always have that same feeling when you go into it.
Agreed.
Ennio Morricone's score, simple, sounds like a heartbeat the whole time, but then it does have dramatic rises in the sound too. And there's a lot of things that kind of play into it. So not only did they have the right director, the right cast, the right writers, they had the right sound, they had the right cinematography. This movie was a culmination of all of these guys just putting together and just really coming out with something that was extremely underrated for the time, but still, again, goes in the pantheon of greatest movies of all time. This will always be in the top 100 of anybody's list.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because of what it is. But this movie will fit into the horror genre as being the best. The producers were David Foster and Lawrence Terman. And maybe I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but David Foster, one notable movie that he did was Gleaming the Cube.
What?
Which is kind of weird. If you've ever seen that movie, it was a really cool.
Of course, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, Christian
Tony
Slater
Hawk's
movie.
in that movie. He's
What?
Yeah. Lawrence Terman, and again, sorry, butchering the name. He produced Sleepy Hollow, The Rocketeer, which is another notable one. Pretty much all of Carpenter's movies he was a producer on. When you get to the screenplay, Bill Lancaster. Now, Bill Lancaster is the son of Burt Lancaster, one of the old classic actors. Didn't really do a lot of things, but this was one of the movies that he wrote, and now the other series of movies that he wrote that has his title on it, he did the Bad News Bears movies.
Oh, wow.
When you look at his credits, he did all the Bad News Bears movies, which is kind of a weird deal for doing the Bad News Bears and then The Thing. It's kind of an unusual combination.
They're kind of the same. I get it.
Yeah, no. Where does that come from? Now,
You don't think that kid just randomly showed up on that bicycle, do you?
I don't know. He was the Thing. He made it 1,000 miles to society. Again, the music was Ennio Morricone. He's done 1,076 different titles under his name.
That's
as far as the
crazy.
music goes. He did like Hateful Eight. He did so many different things. This is one of the very few John Carpenter movies that doesn't have his music in it too.
Right.
Which, again, ensemble, you add all those pieces together, you got that great score, which is just a dramatic, just feeling kind of a score, which is great. Cinematography. Now, the cinematography on this movie too, probably some of the best that you'll ever see. Really, with what they had to use. The landscapes were awesome. The matte paintings were awesome. Just the feeling of isolation, the giantness in the opening scenes, of nothing out there.
Yeah, like when they go to see the ship, and you like have that beautiful landscape that they're actually coasting into with the or not coasting, but flying into with the helicopters. It was beautiful, and I remember like looking at it, going like, "That's actually really
Yeah.
cool."
And that was mostly filmed in Canada, right?
Yeah, Canada. There were some that were at different places, but that was mainly in like British Columbia.
Yeah, I think mostly it was in, I can't remember the name of the town offhand in Canada, because I think on the way there, that's where all the actors thought they almost were going to die. in the
they were
bus.
almost going to go over the corner.
And yeah, they almost slid off the road, and you like would have lost all those actors.
Yeah.
Wow,
And they
this
get
is-
there, and John Carpenter's like, "Hey guys,
Yeah.
welcome."
Hey, what's up?
that's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, some notable movies from Dean, and I'm gonna butcher the name too, Cundy, Jurassic Park, Hook, Roadhouse, Back to the Future.
stupid to have a good time.
And he was a cinematographer on Halloween too. So that's where that kind of
you
John
go.
Carpenter connection comes from. Now the editing on this movie is pretty slick too. I mean, there's a lot of really good parts. There's a couple of fades that are a little bit different, but they really add to the story. They show the pause and the dramatic pause.
Dramatic pause.
And then they kind of fade out to black, but then it brings you kind of back into it. Now, his name is Todd Ramsey, and I picked a couple of notables for him too, like Star Trek, the motion picture, Exorcist 3, which is another great horror movie, kind of at the end of the 80s, which were really, really good. And then Escape from New York. So there's that connection again.
Cool.
Most of these people had worked with John Carpenter before, just like the special effects. Now, the special effects on this movie are often cited as being some of the biggest influential effects of all time.
Well, because it was all practical.
Yes.
There was no
Way better.
CGI. There was all practical effects. When obviously they got a master at it.
Yeah. And this guy was 21 years old. And the guy's name was Rob Bottin. Rob Bottin started a little on, say, like Star Wars.
Right.
He was kind of uncredited on that part of it. Worked on The Fog with John Carpenter. Then he got this job, and he was like, guess what? I'm doing it all. And he wanted to even act in it, too. He kept everything to himself. Lived on the Universal lots for like a month, maybe 2 months.
Had to go to the hospital.
God,
because he worked himself so long.
And it shows. The only thing that he really didn't do, and we'll talk about, is one notable scene.
Right.
But then, then, he worked so hard that I would think that that's why Stan Winston was like, you get sole credit.
Right.
You know, just don't talk about me on this. Even though everything kind of comes together, his ideas for everything was this alien had been around the galaxy and was picking up things from different cultures and different everything, different species. And they created the thing that they have right there.
Right.
And Mike Plug was one of the big artists for the storyboards and everything like that. Very big storyboard artist. Did a lot of Marvel comics and everything like that. Always got great art. Very, very detailed and very horror-esque kind of art. And just imagine